You're listening to Wildlife Control Consultant, where we provide research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest management. Hi, everyone. Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of the Wildlife Control Consultant podcast. We're really glad you made it this week. And so, as you can tell, we have a guest. But before that, just want to give you a few things about what our podcast is all about. Our podcast is about providing technical information for those people that deal with vertebrate pest management. So if that is you, perhaps you're not a professional, we'll welcome you along as well. So definitely do take a few moments to subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you like it. And you can always reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear your thoughts about future shows. Perhaps you have a criticism, perhaps you have a comment. We'd love to hear that. Or, of course, you can always put it into the comment box, certainly below. Well, without any further ado, we want to introduce and welcome Kevin Bergen. He is the Vice President of P Tech Products. That's the letter P dash Tech Products. And his website is nopestvent.com. Now, if you've ever had to deal with dryer vents, you would know, or you may not know, we're going to talk about that today, but there are some sensitivities with dryer vents simply because if you don't screen that properly, you can result in clogging up and fire damage, or at worst fire damage, or maybe at best it's going to burn out their heat sensor, and that's not going to be a problem. So we're going to talk about a solution that his company has developed, and we're welcoming him because if we can exclude a problem, that's a long-term win. Kevin, we're really glad to have you here today. Tell us a little about yourself and what got you started in this particular field.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I got started here. I joined the company about 2 or 3 years ago. It's my father-in-law's company. So I got married to his daughter and ended up moving from Iowa out to Michigan. And
Okay.
he had this company, and I had some manufacturing background as well as some sales and marketing. So it was either between starting another roofing company, which I had in Iowa, or joining his. So I opted in to join his and help him push this product along.
Okay. So you have some ma- uh, basically contracting background then.
Correct.
We
Yep.
could certainly use a lot more of that here in Montana, that's for sure. So if you ever decide you're tired of the taxes and everything out of Michigan, certainly we have a place for you here in Montana. So let's talk a little about this vent. So you said your father-in-law invented it. So what was the motivation behind him developing this particular product?
Yeah, sure. So he was a tool and die maker. So he made plastic injection molds.
Mhm.
And as the auto industry kind of shifted and some of that stuff started moving overseas, his shop was a little bit slower. And he was looking for something to keep him busy. And his wife said, well, they own and manage about 130 apartment buildings.
Oh,
And they said these birds were just a big issue for their dryer vents. All the traditional ones that said that they work pest proof or kept the birds out just failed over time, or they involved a screen which required them to get them cleaned, and then code came along and outlawed those as well.
right. And
Um,
why did they
so
why did the tell the audience why they were outlawed, why these screens were outlawed to prevent animals from getting inside dryer vents?
Sure. So typically, when you put a restriction at the end of a termination, it fills up with lint. So that lint, it's humid, it's coming through there, it catches onto those bars or grates or screens. It quickly fills up and then it restricts that exhaust flow. So without that exhaust flow, you run a lot of risk for fire safety. So as more accidents started happening with those dryer fires across the country, they started
Mm,
paying more and more attention to it.
right. So do you think that uh, regulation or building code is almost nationwide almost? Do you think
It
that's
is, yeah. It's an international. It's in the International Mechanical Code
oh,
as
okay.
well as the International Residential Code. It's just a
Wow.
matter of if they're being enforced
Right,
diligently
right.
yet
Yeah, yeah.
or not. So you're starting to see it a lot more on the East Coast. Like this past year in 2024, we had a huge push starting kind of like in Maine, New Jersey, New York, in that area. And now we're seeing it in Georgia and Florida and things like that, where codents are really starting to take a look at that. In New Jersey, we've heard stories where the code enforcement's come in and basically made them rip off all their covers, and they just kind of
Yeah.
sit there with a hole, and they're scrambling to find a solution.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure I totally agree with that level of government enforcement. I think it could have been, hey, you need to deal with this and give people a little
Sure.
bit of grace here. But nevertheless, I do definitely support because that is a serious thing. Some people, will put clothes in the dryer and then leave the house,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they come back and there's an inferno in front of it, and no one wants that. And certainly we don't want our wildlife control operators, our pest control operators who are trying to help a client, all of a sudden, they put on a $30, $50 screen that they've charged for,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden they're in a lawsuit because,
Right.
they're going to find somebody, and then all of a sudden you're getting a multi 100,000, maybe, well, with housing prices, maybe even more than that to replace that. So, can you pull out your product and show that to the audience and say
Sure.
and
I'll
describe it a
kind
little
of
bit?
start with where it all started.
Yeah.
So originally when he went to work on it, he started with what he called the no nest vent.
Okay.
So this was just it had a hood like a traditional one might have, you see. It
Okay.
was removable, so you could slide this out, and then it had an inner door here. He did, kind of indent that inner door so that if a bird kind of picked up here, it
Right,
wasn't
right.
able to get in right away.
Okay.
So they installed them, and he said, "Hey, just don't clean them, don't do anything with them. Let me know if birds get in." So it held up for about 6, 8 months, and then all of a sudden, sure enough, maintenance called. Yeah, we got birds. So he went out there and looked at it. And what happened was when he took this cover off, he noticed that the lint was actually circulating up around this hood and getting stuck inside here. So that was
Ah,
building it
okay.
up. So just kind of like how you see in the louvers, right? The louvers work great when they're new. They shut nicely, they quickly fill up
Right.
with lint, and then they
Yeah.
hold open. Birds just
Gets into
pop right
the
in there.
yeah, gets into
So
the hinge.
yeah, exactly. So he's seen that. And he's like, well, now what do I do with that? So he brought it back to his shop, and he put it on his dryer. He had a magnet helix sensor on it to test
Mhm.
back pressure. And he was kind of looking at this. And as he would slide this up and down, he noticed that if he slid it up, his magnet helix would just tack over, like it had a lot less back pressure. So he ended up with this thing. He started cutting it up and duct taping it until he basically ended up with this. So
Okay.
this was the first version of the No Pest Vent.
All right.
So that outer shield eventually just turned into an outer door.
Much better. I like the
Still has
design
the
better.
inner door,
Yeah.
and there's a clear exhaust path. So there's nothing restricting that.
Right.
So what actually happened was that he noticed when this thing was in operation, with the cutout corners there, it was
Mm-hmm.
drawing fresh air in and actually cleaning out some of that lint. So he solved his original issue with the no nest vent.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
So that actually increases exhaust efficiency. So he started installing them. That kept the birds out. Well, he built all his own molds. So he's like, well, I better start selling them. So he
Mm.
started selling them. It was originally the no nest vent. He started selling them across the country. And all of a sudden, people are like, hey, these are keeping out mice. This is keeping out
Yeah.
lizards, snakes, things like that. So he's then rebranded it into the no pest vent.
And so is there a magnet on that outer cover? A
There
light
is.
a light
Yep.
mag. Oh, there you
So
go.
if I
Okay.
hold this up like that, so there's a magnet into this outer door here
Okay.
that's kind
Yeah.
of inserted, and
Yeah.
then a stainless steel ball here.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that holds that outer door cover. We did that for wind clap. Every once in a while, if the building was sealed right, it
Yeah.
would start clapping.
Yeah.
But a lot of people like the idea of just a magnetic retention holding that
Sure.
down
Yeah.
from extra pests.
And how much force is there a standard for how much force a dryer is supposed to expel? Or because what obviously if you have to be sure that's light enough so that the airflow allows it to push open, but not so light that a bird can just come along. Like typically they're starlings, I would assume, the
Right,
ones getting in
exactly.
there. Yeah,
Eh,
starlings can be pretty aggressive.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't know those exact
Okay,
numbers. My dryer vent cleaners, they would know that a whole lot because they
sure.
really
Okay,
get into the technical part of that.
yeah.
We have done testing with as far as magnehelic, just kind of testing the back pressure, and then as far as fan speed. So ours, compared to a single flap with a hood dryer vent cover, ours exhausts air 35% more efficiently.
Very nice. Okay.
Because that vortex effect actually helps it exhaust air and it keeps that when it's in operation, it actually goes better. So we have a lot of homeowners, they put it on, and or actually dryer vent cleaners, they put it on and all of a sudden their wives are coming up, hey, what'd you do to the dryer? It's drying our clothes like 15
Mm.
minutes faster. So there's a large advantage to the exhaust efficiency there.
Yeah. And I would think it's also you save some money on the electricity side because if you a more efficient dryer is going to dry quicker, you don't have to burn as much electricity. That's a plus.
Yep.
And also you have something that is I'm not going to call it airtight, but at least it's closed. So now you're
Mhm.
reducing whatever the temperature differential is between the outside of the house and the inside of the house, that's being reduced. So you have some
Exactly.
insulating capacity. And then you would have the the pest exclusion element of it as well. So it's kind of a triple win for you all the way across.
Yeah, you kind
Okay.
of stole my punchline there. So
Oh,
that's what
sorry.
I was gonna, yeah, no,
I'll
you're
shut up.
fine.
All right.
So yeah, so what he then went into the wide mount, which is kind of the refined version. So he made the outer
Okay.
door just a little bit smaller, bigger mount area because when you're
Okay.
typically taking off a louver, they're 6 by 6.
Yeah.
So this is 7.5 by 7.5. So when you're taking off that old one, this is going to cover up any of that old residue around where it might have been caulked or something like that.
Mm.
And this inner door is a little bit thinner too. So this exhausts air even more efficiently than the original No Pest Vent.
And this is the one you're selling now, version
And this
two?
is our most popular. We sell both. The
So
low
both.
profile,
Okay.
yeah, the low profile is what we call the low profile. It's a little bit more of a situational application now.
Okay.
When you have two vents side by side, this doesn't take up a whole lot of room,
Right,
so you
right,
can
right.
you can put them there. But 95% of our sales right now are this wide
Oh,
mount.
that one. Okay. That's the wide. And what are the dimensions of the low profile one? Do you have that off the top of your head?
I think it is 5 by 6. I'm not 100% sure. It's
Five
on our
by
website,
six. Okay.
nopestfriend.com.
So
But
you're saving about an inch to 2 inches depending on the situation. Okay.
yeah,
Wow. And so those are both made out of hardened plastic.
yes, yeah. We use high impact polypropylene.
Okay.
So one of the everything. My father-in-law really believes in American-made products, as the rest of
Mhm.
our team, and
Yeah.
so we source American polypropylene
Okay.
out of Pennsylvania, and we have the highest UV stabilizer that we're able to put in the package.
Wow. I didn't know there were different ratings. Okay.
Well, there is. So if you look at a traditional louvered vent
Hmm.
that's probably coming from China,
Right.
those we've sent them off to our plastic supplier, and we did some different UV testings where they put it in a booth and they just UV ray the heck out of the thing.
Right. Right. Okay.
And ours last about 4 to 5 times longer. So
Wow.
if a louvered vent in the Florida sun is doing about 3 to 5 years, and those Florida guys will tell you they
Right.
they start to crumble after that.
Yeah.
Ours is lasting about 15 to 20.
15 to 20 years. Ooh, okay.
The original no nest vents are actually still on some of the apartment buildings
Oh,
when
no
we
kidding.
designed this thing back in 2007.
2007 is when you started. Okay. Wow. So you're on version two, version one. Okay. And do you have anything else and so in terms of installation, uh, when I installed one, I'm not, I think it was because I think we met on Facebook is when
Yeah.
on
Yep.
Facebook, and I think I purchased one of yours. And I was just dis because My dryer vent was just the original one was I was hoping ideally to reuse the same screw holes, but it didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Is what would be your advice for people who are uh does it really matter that much that it's exact, or is it, obviously is it better? Is there something, can you create new holes in the polypropylene, or is that something you would encourage people not to do?
I it depends because if you're going off of like the standard 6 by 6 and those are
Hmm.
going in each corner, if you're trying to match those holes, sometimes it can end up where that screw is right where this door now wants to rest, and it's
Yeah.
holding it up against away from the magnet
Yeah,
and just
yeah, you
kind of
don't want to do
negating
that.
a lot of the benefits.
Right. Yeah.
So we do offer two different screw patterns. A lot of our contractors, we have one contractor in Cincinnati that's, I think right now, since he started with us, he's up to installing about 45,000 of these things. He just
Oh,
does dry.
he's installed 45,000?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
He does tons of multifamily stuff.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, around that area, he really is the dryer vent guy. So
I
he
would,
installs a ton of these
oh
things.
my gosh.
But yeah,
Okay.
he's just using our just the wide mount, the faceplate, and the doors. There's two different hole patterns on the back of this. There's an interior one. They're
Okay.
kind of just skimmed over, so that way
Hmm.
you can just poke it through with a screw, and then
Yeah.
you can screw through it on the front side.
Yeah.
And then there's an exterior one. So the advantage of the interior one is that it's completely concealed by the door when the
Right.
screws are in place.
Oh,
The
nice.
exterior one is when you're up against like brick buildings and stuff like that. A lot of times they knock that hole out bigger than what it needs to be.
Right. Right.
And so you don't have
Yeah.
any substance behind those screw holes. So
Yeah.
then we have that outside pattern that does have their exposed fasteners when the situation requires.
Do you recommend people putting a bead of silicone and then putting the screw through the silicone in, or do you think that's unnecessary?
Um, we don't see a whole lot of that. We see more of what we recommend is that you screw it on and then silicone around each side and the top and leaving the
Okay.
bottom open. So that
Right.
way, any humidity or condensation that comes off that dryer
Oh,
vent can
okay.
wick out. You don't want to trap it.
Right, right, right. Okay, I gotcha. All right. So seal the three sides.
So one of the
Just
things that we really noticed is when the HVAC contractors got a hold of it, they started calling us and saying, "Hey, this thing's not a no pest vent. This thing is a backdraft damper on the outside." I said, well, no, it keeps out pests. And those guys they're not thinking too much about the pest exclusion. They're
right.
just thinking about their application.
Yeah.
But this a lot of guys in the southern climates, they're worried about something called the reverse stack effect. So in the summer, the way the conditioning envelope works is it's sucking air from those upper rooms. So when they're putting them on dry bathroom fans and dryers and upper ceilings, it's actually sucking air from the outside. So he says when he puts on a louvered vent, he can look at a bathroom fan and it looks like a leaf blower's blowing inside of the thing until he puts ours on because ours, when it seals, it actually seals that entire exhaust penetration versus normally you'd have a louver that's
Yeah.
going across of it with seams that still
Hmm.
allows air to come in.
Right.
So that kind of started us down a road of, okay, let's see how energy efficient is this thing really. So we got with some people to help us out try and figure out some calculations. And none of this is scientifically proven yet right now,
Right.
but our estimation is that the installation of a no pass vent and sealing it properly, getting it professionally installed, actually can save the homeowner up to $58 a year on energy
Oh,
costs
no kidding. Okay.
because it's
So,
keeping those laundry rooms and bathrooms cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter.
okay. Now help me. I guess I'm missing a little bit about the reverse stack effect. So the air conditioner guys did not want air coming in from the outside. They wanted to stop that.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
because especially when you got that humid air coming in.
Okay. All
So,
right.
and I mean, if anybody has ever had a puddle of water in their dryer and they're thinking, what is this?
Mm,
It can very easily be that humid air coming into the conditioned envelope of the home, and then
Okay.
condensing and it puddles. So they're
Right, because it
getting
hits.
mold and mildew on their
All right.
dryers. They're getting
Okay.
mold and mildew around their bathroom fans, things like that.
That's where the reverse stack effect, because a stack means you're trying to exhaust something, and reversing means it's now becoming the gateway into the structure. That's that reversing of the
So,
stacking.
so the stack effect is, and you know, if anybody knows about this, they're going to say, "Hey, you missed this, or you missed that, or you're wrong with this." But the way I understand it is the
Yeah.
stack effect is like when you have hot air, it's pulling up,
Okay.
right?
Right.
So if you're heating the home, it's pulling up. Well, as that
Right.
heat rises, it's
Right.
creating a vacuum on the lower levels.
Okay.
So it
Right.
so
Right.
so in the winter, you're going to have what's called a stack effect, where
Yeah.
the lower penetrations of the home are actually drawing in air, and in the
Hmm.
summer, you're going to have the opposite, where it's
Right.
actually cooling and that hot air is coming
Coming
down.
down. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Okay.
it kind of pulls in that, and
Oh, all right. Okay. Okay. All right. So there you go. So sure, it's just a little bit more bigger than I thought of there. Okay. Um, so what do you want people, what are some of the, we've talked about some of the features of your product.
mhm,
What are some things you want to be sure that if a wildlife control operator and a pest control operator is saying, hey, I need to incorporate that in as a service to my clients,
sure.
what are some things that you want them to be aware of and know of so that they can make sure they're using the product appropriately as your manufacturer guidelines, and also to protect their clients, and then of course themselves from doing something wrong. Let's just put it that way.
Sure,
So,
sure. So, um, as far as doing something wrong with the, so we have the poly version, and so with it being a plastic, it is a little bit pliable, right? So
mhm,
if you over torque those screws, you can
right.
simply put this bottom corner down a little bit more. Now you get a gap here, right? And then that wind and those birds are going to be able to find a way to get in because those things aren't quite sealed. So what we really try to get guys to understand is that when you're putting these things on, they're just meant to hold up against the home. You
Right.
don't got to winch them down tight. So just kind of snug them up, get it up in there, and make sure that this thing is sitting entirely flat. It does help if you can get this top tilted back just a little bit. That'll help those
Oh,
doors
right, right,
fall
right.
back a little bit better. We get some guys that think the magnet, will pull it open, so they'll
No,
install it like
yeah.
this and then wonder why it's sticking open like that, right?
Gotcha.
So
Right,
you
right.
you, you got to let gravity do the work, and you want that thing as level as you can. And if you can, push that top in just a tad. That'll close it nicely and
Right.
allow it to use its full function. We're really seeing a ton of success and kind of what we're going to be, trying to push a little bit more for guys to understand, especially coming up at the next wildlife expo here in Orlando,
Hmm.
is that because of our product features and the pest exclusion, it's actually a great upsell opportunity. So if you're on another exclusion call about something unrelated and you see a louvered vent, there's automatically an opportunity to upgrade that into a no pest vent and install it and increase your job ticket right
Okay.
there, because there's the energy savings, the exhaust efficiency, it dries clothes faster, it increases the lifespan of the appliance, and it's going to have the pest exclusion. Plus, it's going to last longer.
No, I would agree. And that's just, I think that's good advice just for those of you in the audience, particularly those of that are new. If you're not, when you go to the house to do X, you should be looking at the entire structure and saying, what are some things I can do to help harden this from pests in the future? So that is just, you should, chimney caps, whatever the case may be. And these are relatively simple installs. I mean, like I said, I installed one on my house, and I'm not the handiest person in the world. And probably the biggest thing I was worried about was about the tube connection. I was like, what happens if the tube connection doesn't fit? Then now what do I do? So,
Sure.
and I was able to, it worked, and we have, so I was kind of tickled pink about it. So, because we had our house resided, and so I needed to get a new one anyways, right? So
Sure.
I was like, yeah, it it was kind of neat. And so, could you talk a little about any tips or techniques if someone has, if they're having difficulty getting that connection with the tube?
Sure. Yeah, so our vent is designed to fit a standard 4-inch exhaust tube, right? It's got a little bit of a, you can hardly see it through the camera, but it's got a little bit of a taper there to kind of
Okay,
aid in that alignment. If you can, you'd like to push it up against there. It's got a little shoulder right here, about an eighth inch away from the end,
okay,
and
yeah,
it should hit that
yeah.
shoulder
You want it to
if
abut that.
you can.
Hmm.
A lot of the guys that are doing ton of replacements, they keep some foil tape around. So if you do have a little bit of a gap, what they do is they just run that foil tape around the inside to kind of bridge that.
Okay,
And that way it allows the air to go where it needs to go and it's sealing the home. Because if you don't, well, now we might have a great backdraft damper because we got two of them, right?
hmm,
But if you got a gap here, well, now the air is going to sneak in through the sides or in the siding
right,
and things
right.
like that.
Now, the foil tape, is that a specifically uh, authorized product to be used with the dryer vents because it can handle heat? Is that heat and
Yeah,
moisture?
yeah,
Is that what it's designed for? Okay,
yeah. And actually, if I'm correct, I think that the code requires them all to be taped, or all the seams around the tape inside the whole
okay,
exhaust. So
gotcha.
anytime you have a longer run, you're going to kind of tape those anyway because you want to keep that air out.
Right. Okay, foil tape. All right, good. And I understand that you have was there anything more on your hardened plastic or your polypropylene? Is that the correct word?
Correct. Yeah,
Polypropylene versions of this device. Cost? What's it retail for?
yeah, so it retails for 15.95.
Okay.
We do have some great uh contractor discounts that we can offer when we're selling
Hmm.
by the case,
Okay.
to allow contractors to make their own margin on it.
Now, does someone need to have an account with you, or is it just they get an account by buying the bulk?
No, they would need to contact us so we can set them
Contact
up
you.
with an
Okay.
account. Yeah. And
Okay.
the best way to do that is you can go on to nopestvent.com. Our website's undergoing a little bit of a remodel to try and
Hmm.
make this a little bit easier for contractors. But if
Yeah.
you want to fill out the form on nopestvent.com, you can do that, or you can just simply call into our phone and talk to me.
Mhm.
Just call in and ask for Kevin. That number is
Okay.
616
616
772
772
0659.
0659. Ask for Kevin.
Yep, it'll be on the
Okay.
website as well.
Sure. Okay.
And we also, just in 2024, around I think it was September, we kind of launched our metal version. So, in thinking of getting in with the exclusion guys, one of the biggest thing is a poly vent can be chewed, right? So, so
Yeah.
what we came out with was a galvalume steel, a powder coated galvalume steel version of our wide mount. So it's got galvalume steel heavy duty mount along with a lighter gauge outer damper that's galvalume steel, and then still the poly inner door
Wow. Okay.
with the magnet as well. So we got the magnet right in here.
Sure. Yeah.
So it does run a little bit higher in price, but it was something that was kind of asked of us
Yeah.
by some of the pest control guys, is getting something that was metal so that way they could be sure. Because if an animal knows that there's a nice warm home there, and then you take off the old cover and you put a plastic one on, now they already know, well, that's my home. They're going to chew right through it, right?
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
in
Okay.
those instances, and for as far as an upsell again to the customer, our guys have really liked this metal guard version. We call it the metal guard.
And where are the screw holes for the attachment? Are they all under the door?
Yep. So
Okay.
we have these on the outside. We do have a template available that allows
Okay.
you to kind of set it on there and drill in your
Nice.
outside pattern if you
Good.
need it.
If you need it, good.
Obviously, your go-to is to try and make those interior screw holes work. If
Yeah.
not, you can do a little bit extra and just pop those holes on the outside.
On the outside. So you would use a self-seating screw, or you have to drill them open with a regular screw,
I would
with a
definitely
regular
drill
drill.
them open.
Drill
Yeah,
them
it's going
open.
to be a lot easier
Yeah.
with those self tappers and stuff like that. They tend to walk on you, scratch the paint,
Gotcha.
things like
Okay.
that. So.
Do you have a particular size that you recommend? Like, is it quarter inch, 3/8, or
We use
size?
a number. We recommend a number 8.
Number 8.
A Phillips panhead works perfect. That's
Okay.
what we include. Like on Amazon, if you get them on Amazon, we include an inch and a half stainless steel panhead number 8 screw.
And you'd want to put the bead of silicone again on the three sides,
Yep,
leaving the bottom open.
correct. Yep.
Correct. Okay. Fascinating. And so what's the retail cost of your metal version?
So the metal one, because it's powder coated, and there's a lot more to it than
Oh
the
yeah,
poly
powder
version.
coating ain't cheap, folks.
Yeah, this thing's it retails for 45.
$45. Okay.
But again,
And
there's substantial discounts for contractors, especially
with
when
the
you're ordering in big
contractor
waves.
discount as well. Okay.
But the great thing is these things come in a 10 by 10 by 16 box. So they're easily like between our poly and our metal guard. The poly fits about 14 a case and the metal guard fits 16. So they really don't take a whole lot of room on the truck to
Yeah.
have them on there. That's the best practice. If you have them there right away and you're talking to the homeowner about the exclusion to be able to upsell them right in. I mean, with the advantages, they're already getting an upgrade to their original one that they're going to notice in addition to the exclusion of it.
Yeah. Now, are you getting any inquiries for dealers, or are you just simply keeping it all in house? Because I would think shipping costs might be a way that might be a challenge, particularly for the metal ones, given they would assume they're heavier.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do have wholesalers that we sell to, like we're with Animal Traps and Supplies,
Okay. They're out of
Wildlife
Michigan,
Control
aren't they?
Systems. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our metal guard is available, I believe, on both of those.
Okay.
So
So
yeah,
if
and
someone wanted to be a wholesaler for you, or a retail seller for you, they could contact you and make arrangements
absolutely.
for what that would be
Yep.
required.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Excellent. Do you have a recommendation on price for what someone, or do you have an idea what industry people are charging to
Yeah.
install these? Are they charging like $50,
Well, most
$75?
of our guys are getting about 100 to 140 to install the poly installed.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
and 150 to 170 for the. Now everybody, I tell some guys that and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I could never get that." And
Sure.
then the
Well,
other guys were like, "Well, I get that all day long."
yeah, yeah.
It depends on for
Where
the
you live
homeowner and
matters. Yeah,
yeah, and what situation you're in, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, we get guys that are putting on the poly for 69 and putting on the metal guard for 100, but
yeah. And I would think
it
it's
all depends
different.
on how your business is.
Yeah, it's different if you're on a 40-foot ladder having to put it on versus for me, I was standing on the ground
Right,
and
exactly.
installing it, right? So don't be afraid to make money, folks, but you don't have to retire on every single one that you're installing, right? So, you
Right.
know,
And one of the things that we're moving towards in 2025 is really trying to reinforce the contractors when they're charging these things. So
yeah,
we're putting together some packages that say like, a No Pest Vent certified installer and the benefits of a professional installing these versus a homeowner or DIY or some of the things that you might miss. Just to
hmm,
kind of separate them a little bit more to allow
yeah,
them to put it on, because obviously we would love the contractors to put these on even
yeah.
more so than the homeowners, but
Hmm. And
that's
is that
something that
because to ensure that they're being installed properly? Is that
yep.
part of that goal there? Okay.
Yep, yeah, and I mean, we get some guys that'll put them on with 2 screws
Hmm.
and then wonder why the thing's not working right. Like, right? So it's like, okay, well, you got to use 4, right? So,
Right. It's for.
I mean, we've seen homeowners put these things in upside down. We've seen them put them on the soffits where they're and wondering why the magnet's not fully enclosed. I mean, I've seen it all. It's been some interesting conversations. So,
You got to put some of these photos up on your website just to,
yeah,
like what not to do. I think
yeah.
I think those tools are important. If not, then are you looking at creating like an in-house, like some YouTube trainings or something that you're going to put out there for your contractors and say, hey, here are some things that we've had here, that problems that you've encountered, and don't do this. Don't do
Yeah.
this mistake. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're like one of the part of our website kind of remodel is a learning center that'll have some of those articles for contractors.
Gotcha.
One of the things that we're putting together for our new guys here in the next 4 to 6 weeks is, we have what we've identified or what we've heard as the best upsell practices.
Oh, very
So we're
nice.
putting together guides for that. Here's what's
Okay.
worked for other guys.
Hmm.
We're putting together packages for people to put on their websites to kind of promote it, as well
Nice.
as social media posts, kind of like a package that guys can put on their social media, like Facebook pages and stuff like that, to
Mm,
just kind of put it out there. But
sure.
what we're really trying to do is push that, a certified installer or a professional installer to kind of differentiate yourself and take yourself away from those DIYers so that way
Yeah.
you can get the value of your service.
Excellent. Okay. And when do you anticipate that portion of your website, the Learning Center, when do you think your website will be done? Do you have a
Yeah, well,
timeline
yeah.
on that right now?
We're thinking that the new one's going to be live here in the next 6 to 8 weeks. I
Okay.
don't. I mean, if you contact me, I'll start giving you stuff as soon as I get it out.
Sure. Sure. Right.
But with some of those tech guys, their deadlines kind of move around a lot. So we're
Yeah.
working with them the best we can. If anybody's built the website, they know what I mean. So
Right. So you're hoping then by mid-March at the latest, because we're recording here on the 15th of January, 16th of January. I'm a day off here. 16th of January. So you're looking at about mid-March is when that's like the outer limit. So it could be sooner, but the
yep.
outer limit's probably going to be mid-March. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and we'll have most of our assets that we're going to be able to put together for packages. I mean, I'm talking digital assets and guides
Hmm.
and things like that. That will all be available. That we'll start emailing guys here the first about mid-February.
Okay.
So it'll be up on the website as soon as I can get those guys to get it all done. But we'll have a lot of our stuff done ahead of time.
Yeah, it's sort of amazing that, well, we uh contracting can be tough.
Absolutely.
So, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to be sure that you want to get out to the audience here before we wrap up here to make sure that we've kind of well rounded out the information you want to get out there?
No, I think that about covers it. That covers the technical part of it and some kind of the product features or techno babble, some people call it, right? But what
Yeah.
we're really trying to gear towards is an offer that gives contractors and professionals kind of the tools they need to keep on growing their business, right? Because we've kind of identified that it's not good enough to just have a termination that's better than everybody else's, right?
Mm.
It's just how does that relate to contractors and them growing their business? So we're really trying to commit to what can we do to help our guys grow the revenue of their business.
Yeah, so not just a product, you're trying to build the training to give the soft skills necessary to give the client and your client and their client the total package.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
Any other ideas you're working on down the road? I mean, it seems like if you folks are involved in polypropylene material and making your own dyes, is there anything down the road that you want to kind of tease our audience with that you're kind of looking at?
There's nothing at this moment that we can
Okay.
really we got to get some patent stuff out there
Oh,
first.
yeah.
So nothing we can really start to talk about yet, but
Okay.
we're
All right.
definitely
Okay. Well, I have, gotta
yeah.
ask a little bit. So one of the problems being a manufacturer like yourself, this is kind of we're getting a little bit bigger issue than just simply your product. But one of the challenges, of course, in our industry is that we are small, right? And compared to the pest control industry, when you look
Sure.
at and there's a biological reason for that, and that is what's called trophic levels. And trophic just means feeding levels. In other words, there's always going to be more plants than there are plant eaters, and more
Mhm.
plant eaters than there are carnivores. And so, as the higher up the food chain you go, the less customers you have, right? So,
Sure.
so with vertebrate folks, we're always going to be the rule of thumb is whatever the pest control industry is, will be 10% of that.
Hmm.
So if you have, 10,000 pest controllers, spraying pesticides, there'll be about 1,000 wildlife control operators.
Sure. Okay.
So one of the challenges is when guys are producing a new product, do they go through the cost of getting a patent only to have it copied and stolen anyways by an overseas entity? And
Yeah.
I'll let you fill in what countries or whatever you think are causing that. But you get where I'm going. In other words, is it even worth it? Do you have any advice for people? Because we have one of the things I found in this industry is they're very creative, partly because they've had to be, right? So they've had to make situations, and there's has been sort of a niche industry. One of the things that I've been kind of pleased about is probably since the 2000s, there's been a revolution, which is, it's not like a technological revolution like you have in computers, but for our industry, you see a lot of more niche products have been developed. We have new cage traps. We have different types of other trapping devices. We have a lot of exclusion equipment, yours being one of them, right? I mean, your
Hmm.
your business, you may have been making it for carpenters and contractors per se, but it's really wildlife. What spurred it was wildlife damage, right?
Right.
And so that's huge for us, and the fact that but still it's a relatively small market, which is one of the benefits of your product, that it has more uses than just simply keeping animals out,
Right.
right? What advice do you have for people trying to market a new product? Is it worth going through the effort of getting a patent? How do
You
they
know,
evaluate that? Do you?
yeah, that's tough to say. With ours, the advantage we have is that there's on average about 3 vent covers on a home,
Right.
right?
So
And
you have
every
volume,
home has
right?
them.
Yeah, you have volume,
So there's a little bit more of a market there for us.
right? Yeah,
But uh, yeah, whether or not it's worth it, a patent can cost you a lot of money.
right.
And we've gone through the process, well, yeah, a few times.
Few
And
times.
and so it is hard to see that. What what I would say is you really got to look at what the lifetime value of your customer is going to be, right? So we have on our end our own figures that say, okay, hey, if on average, if we can get a contractor to get on board with us, they're going to sell about X amount a year. And if you
Mm,
don't have something that's going to be kind of sticky like that, where somebody can keep on selling it and keep on
right,
ordering it, it gets a little bit more difficult versus, if one guy might buy five and then be done,
right.
because he's got all he
Yeah,
needs. But I would say
that's good
the
advice.
the, the digital age we're in, it's never been easier to promote a product,
Mm,
with how things are, with the way you can sell things online, how you can promote it on social media and things like that. It has never been cheaper. And there's like we have no giant distribution. We're in one hardware store, do it best, but it's such a small part of ours. So
mm.
you really can kind of think about taking all that stuff in-house and kind of bootstrapping your way into promoting the stuff yourself, and you can take a lot of those costs out of it and keep your margins.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's some good advice. Just really evaluate, how many do you think you're legitimately going to sell, and then try to determine, is a patent going to be worth it? And then for some products, it may even be at the point where where you don't worry about what someone's going to do as a knockoff, keep improving your product so you're staying
Mhm.
ahead of them. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, it is tough because we've had some people produce some things in our industry, and I beg people, I says, if you're going to produce a product, you've got to hang in there for at least 5 years. Because a
Right.
lot of times there's like a tipping point because we're a very I'm not using conservative in a political sense. I'm using conservative in the sense it's slow to change. So,
Sure.
because once guys come up with a system that works for them, they're loath to adopt something new unless you get
Sure.
some key people in the industry that are saying, "Hey, this is the bomb."
Sure.
They're slow adopters in that sense, and so they have to sometimes. By the time we got to year 5 and the industry is starting to adopt the product, the person's out of business. And it's like,
Right.
oh no, don't do that. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's been a struggle. Well, really appreciate you taking the time with us today. To talk about your product because I do think it's so important. We think it's such a small thing, but it can be a big thing if we're not
Yeah.
carrying, dryer vent covers and other exhaust vent covers. Because I'm assuming, as you were trying to insinuate, this is also going to work on your exhaust vents for showers and bathrooms for
Exactly. Yep.
moisture based. Yeah.
Yep. We put them on. Yeah, we put them on everything.
Right.
I got three of them on my home here. So yeah, they
Oh,
work great
excellent.
for showers. I mean, a lot of guys say, okay, now I don't have the fog on my mirror like I used to, right? Because it's
Sure,
going out a
sure.
little faster.
Okay. All right.
And one more thing, we are going to
Yeah.
be at the Critter Control meeting as well as the Wildlife Expo in Orlando
Okay.
here at the end of the month. So if
Are
you're
you
planning
open
on
to
going
going
there,
going well, Critter Control, that's a franchise. That's the franchise meeting, so I think that's restricted to only franchise owners.
right? Yep,
So you're available for other franchise companies because there are a few other industry franchises out there. I'm assuming you'd be open to being having an
absolutely.
invitation from them as well.
Yep.
Okay, sure. We'll put that out there, folks. So if you're one of the members of from the various franchises, or if you have a company large enough, you give them a ring. You come, I would come out and do a little talk for you, and maybe do some field training with you as well. So it's something to think about. Well, Kevin, we're really glad to have you with us today, and we want to make sure we close off here. We've been listening to Kevin Bergen. He is the vice president of P Tech Products, and he's been talking about his No Pest Vent. So obviously it's nopestvent.com because it doesn't just keep out birds, it keeps out other things as well as cold or hot air from the outside. Definitely check him out because if you're interested in doing some exclusion, because when we're dealing with dryer vents, particularly that's a big safety legal issue and you want to be sure you're using quality products. And he's saying here that this is a product that's going to bypass some of those safety concerns and making sure that you're going to be according with those while still fulfilling the desire to keep pests out of your particular structure. He does offer some uh, contractor discounts for you, but definitely reach out to him, and you can do that by phone at 616-772-0659, and you want to ask for Kevin. Let me repeat that for you again, 616-772-0659. And you're on Central Time or are you on Eastern Time in Michigan?
Eastern time.
Eastern Time in Michigan. Want to make
Yep.
sure that's Eastern Time in Michigan. And let me give the URL one more time, nopestvent.com. Nopestvent.com. And he has two vents for sale right now, one that's polypropylene and one that's metal that has been powder coated, which is kind of neat. So you have options here in front of you. Well, thanks everyone for listening. You've been listening to the Wildlife Control Consultant podcast, where we talk about technical information, all things related to vertebrate pest management. Do take a few moments, if you would, to subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can be notified of future issues. And if you have questions, comments, yes, even criticisms, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, or you can just simply yell at me in the comment section below. Just as a note, I have not received any compensation for this particular podcast. That's my fire department calling. I have not received any compensation. I bought the product on my own and then reached out to have an interview with them. So definitely check them out. NoPestVent.com. Take care, everyone. This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant Podcast. Vertebrate pest control is an inherently dangerous activity involving risk of bodily injury to you, others, and/or property. Vertebrate pest control also involves legal issues, so be sure to always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and/or other control methods when controlling pests. Wildlife Control Consultant LLC, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their affiliates are not responsible for your use of the information provided here. Always consult a qualified and appropriate professional before employing the information provided here.